Hey everyone, my name is Harknee. I'm a techno and house music DJ and producer, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how I made my latest track, Jam on Acid. So let's get into this. I'm going to be showing you how I made my drums, the bass, and the lead sounds. So starting at the top, we'll begin with the drums. Now I used my Roland TR-8 to record all of my drums. I also played them in live and recorded them. So as you can see, I've got the left and the right of the main output of the TR-8, and then I've also got each of the individual channels recorded separately for extra processing that I'm going to explain. I wanted to record it live to give it that live feeling and sort of give it that live flow that you don't get whenever you program in drums using a sequencer. So all of this was made and performed live and on the fly, which you can hear with some of the reverb from the Roland TR-8 here. That was all programmed in as I was playing it live. You can hear me messing around with the delay time, which is affecting some of the percussion, especially the snare and the clap sound. So what I've done is I've used some saturation, some EQ and compression just to use the left and the right output of the Roland TR-8 just to boost the drums overall and give it a bit more energy. It also helps a lot with giving it a bit more presence. This really comes from the saturation that I've used. I've used the soft tube saturation knob, and what this does is really give some of the snare some crunch, as you can hear. Because without it, it sounds very plain, but then when you put it back in, it's giving some real nice crunch to the snare. As well as this, I've used some EQ. I've rolled off a lot of the sub-frequencies as I didn't feel they were particularly necessary. And then I've also heavily reduced around 1200 Hertz. This is because I've used the clap in a more abstract way, which we'll talk about in a second. But I felt that it was quite loud in the mix on the Roland TR-8, so I just wanted to reduce its level overall. And also because I was just using the left and the right to boost and add some presence to the overall mix of the drums, I didn't want them to be overpowering the individual sounds. So taking a bit out of here is just reducing the overall clarity of the drums, but still retaining its energy, because a lot of the energy is coming from the lower frequencies with the kick and the low tom, which we'll talk about in a second. And then I've also used Logic's SSL emulation, just with a bit of light compression and also some increased saturation from the distortion on the plugin. I've also used it just to catch some of the peaks from the saturation, as the saturation was boosting the overall level quite a lot, and I just wanted to calm that overall level down just with a basic bit of light compression. Generally, I think using this form of parallel processing just adds some nice extra presence and some punch to the drums overall, and really helps with the energy of the track overall, because there's quite a lot of different sounds happening in these drums, especially in the lower frequencies where it does get quite busy, but just having this extra boost from the left and right output of the Roland TR-8, it really helps give it some more definition and some more punch and power as well. Now, moving on to the kick. Again, I've used the saturation knob, and as well as that, I've used some overdrive. Now, I've used the 909 kit, so I'm just using a really traditional 909 sounding drum. You know, the classic sounding 909 kick, very punchy, very subby. And then using the soft tube saturation knob, it helps give it some extra presence. The soft tube saturation knob is help adding some distortion to the kick and adding higher frequencies as well. But then coupled with the overdrive plugin, now this is one of my favorite things to do with any sort of kick I get, is put it through the Logic Overdrive stock plugin. and it helps add a lot more almost boxiness and extra punch as well. It helps increase the tone of the kick as well. It takes the focus away from the lower frequencies, sort of around here in the sort of 50 to 60 hertz, and it helps boost its focus more to sort of up here, which helps it stand out in the mix. But what I've also done with this EQ is I rolled off up to 50 hertz, which is probably a bit of a strange thing to do for a techno or house kick, because you want all those sub-frequencies to really punch through. But I felt that this kick, I felt it sounded a bit lethargic with all of these sub-frequencies, and I was looking for a more energetic and short and quick sounding lower end. And when I've used the low tom that we'll get into a second, it sounds very quick and like a rapid fire bottom end, and that's what I was really hoping for. And when you've got a lot of sub-frequencies, they take a little bit longer to disperse, and whenever you've got that extra length, it sounds lethargic, slow, quite heavy, and that's like the complete opposite of what I was looking for. And then lastly, we have some reverb on the channel as well, just to help it stand out in the mix a bit more. It just helps it cut through overall a little bit better. Now, before we get on into the low tom, clap, and the hi-hats, we'll just cover some of the other bits of percussion that I've got going on. Just some very simple processing. As you can see with the other two toms, the mid-tom and the high tom, I've just rolled off a lot of the bottom end to stop the frequencies interfering with the kick and the bass. There's a lot of reverb on this high tom here as well. I've also panned them as well, left and right, for some extra stereo imaging, and they're playing sort of classic 909 tom melody that you sort of see guys like Jeff Mills using quite a lot. Then the snare here as well, just rolled off a lot of the bottom end and added some reverb to it. Not much going on there, but with the left and right output of the TR8 and with the real crunchy snare, you get a really nice sound. You get a really nice full crunchy sounding snare. Then moving on to the rim shots, again rolled off the bottom end, reverb. I've got some automated delay at the beginning as well, just to add a bit of interest to the intro. The delay channel is the same channel that I've used for the lead, which we're going to talk about a bit later on. Now the closed hi-hat, again, rolled off loads of the bottom end, simple stuff. The ride, what I've done here is chucked Isotope's Ozone Imager on here. I thought this had the potential to sound quite bright within sort of the left and right channels. See, originally it's quite a mono sound, and I wanted a little bit of sparkle within the left and right stereo field, because at the moment all that was really there was the lead sound with its stereo delay channel, or stereo delay bus, sorry, and I felt it was missing some percussive elements in the left and the right channel, which I'm really getting with the Ozone Imager. Now, as you heard earlier, I had my low tom going off. What I've used here is Klangenums, I'm definitely saying that wrong, the IV-GI2 free saturation plugin from them. And what I've used this for is just to boost the hell out of this tom and to give it a hell of a lot more presence, because it was really lacking when it was unprocessed. See, those two working together are really giving it that quick, rapid-fire rhythm that I wanted in the bottom end, and having all those sub-frequencies sort of below 50 or 40 hertz, I really felt was just going to slow the track down, but having the kick and this low tom be really short, but really saturated and feel really percussive, especially on this low tom, this saturation plugin is really attacking the attack of the tom sound and making it almost sound like a real-life tom. You you can almost hear that resonance that you get from a traditional drum whenever you hit it, and it sort of reverberates around the drum itself. I'm getting that sort of vibe from this plugin. And then I've chucked a compressor on there, and I've sent it to the kick for some side chaining just to duck it out of the way every time the kick hits, because I was a little bit scared that I was going to get a lot of mud build up in the bottom end from the tom, and I didn't want that interfering with the kick. And then I've also done this by rolling off, up to 75 hertz here, just to avoid a lot of these sub-frequencies interfering with, what was left of these sub-frequencies of the kick. Now, as I mentioned previously, the clap sound was a lot more abstract, and I reduced it in the overall mix of the left and right channel of the TR8. But what I've done on here is, as you can see, I've used Valhalla's Frequency Echo, which is a fantastic free plugin for making some mind-melting, reverby, delayed sounds. Especially what I've done with it here is I've used 3 of the components of the plugin and I've automated them. As you can see, I've got the delay, the amount that it's shifting, and the feedback. And what that does is to create a really abstract sound and very, very different from what the traditional 909 clap is used for. Now, I've used it like this for a build-up for a sort of small breakdown part of the song, and the way the tension is really brought in using the delay time that I've got going down and then back up again, it gives it that really abstract and different feel that you get from, a traditional use of a 909 clap. As well as that, I've got some more side chaining going on from the kick. This was to help give it some rhythm and give the kick a bit more presence as well, as it ducks down every time. And also what I've got here is the Pancake plugin, which is a plugin that basically does all your panning automation for you. As you can see here, it will slowly move left and right. It's only subtle, but that's only because I've got the mix down at 30%. But as that slowly moves from left to right, it helps add a lot more stereo width and sort of stereo imaging that I was looking for. I used this plugin instead of using the Ozone Imager, because I was looking for some movement in the stereo field, not just things to be in the stereo field, but move within the stereo field and give the overall sound some interest as things move around. This is something I've also used on my delay channels and reverb channels that we'll get to talk about in a minute. Now, moving on to the hi-hat that I've got going on here. Now, as you can see, this has all been sort of programmed in. Originally, I didn't record much of the hi-hat in the original take that I did of my Roland TR8 recording, but because I was so happy with how this take came out, I didn't really want to go and redo it, because when you sort of get that perfect performance from something and there's no way that you're going to replicate it again, so you just have to compromise in fixing it in post, basically. And this is what I've done. I only used the hi-hat for a little bit at the end, sort of around here of the recording, but then I realized that overall I wanted to use it a bit more, so unfortunately I had to go and reprogram it and put it in later on. And as you can hear in this part of the mix, obviously the hat isn't there. And so what I've had to do is just basically take, because it was originally there at the end, so I've just had to take the channel and just paste it back here. But what I have done here is, again, for some more stereo width, I've used the Haas effect, which is by delaying one of the channels ever so slightly after panning them hard left and hard right, panning it by a few milliseconds, and it will slowly give the illusion that there's a huge amount of width within the sound. There it sounds very narrow, but then when you bring it in, because it's so subtle and unnoticeable to the human ear, it gives that illusion. But if I sort of begin to increase this, it doesn't have the same sort of effect. So again, this was just used to increase the width of the percussion. I didn't use the pancake for this because the hi-hat is such a sort of stable part of the track. I wanted it to be wide, but I just wanted it to stay in its own position and not move around the stereo field, unlike the clap that I wanted to move around all over the place.